Good evening. You're listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Tonight with me is RDV. We are covering the 1981, 82, 83, whatever you want to call it, release of RDV. You're not choking on parsley there that's laced with something deadly, are you?
No, just partying a little bit. It's all.
Okay, Lovely but Deadly, starring absolutely nobody, but that's not quite true. This isn't one of the last few remaining exploitation type films. Obviously, we had the blaxploitation RDV in the 70s with martial arts and stuff. This is Cheerleader martial arts. She kind of goes roguish, so kind of sort of in the high school that her little brother ended up ODing on. And it's very wacky. It's extremely low budget. You see boom mics and this and that. I got to tell you, for my initial thoughts, it's a forgettable film. It's not a very good one, but it's mildly somehow entertaining in a really 80s cheesy sort of way that doesn't really offend you, I think, too. And I just wish I had about 4 times as much action here with the fights and everything, as bad as they are, but I didn't hate it. It's just one of those ones that slips through the cracks and nobody talks about it unless you're looking for bad films. What's your initial take?
Yeah, I knew it was gonna be like a very like low budget film. It's so different. It's so different. Like in the '60s movies, you get the biker chicks, you know.
Yep.
It's just Gamora, played by Erwin Keyes. That guy stood out to me. I'm like, he's supposed to be like, he's the dumb as rock, but he's the muscle.
Mm-hmm.
And he can just crush you. He was in A House of a Thousand Corpses. Do you know that? He was in there. He's also been in The Warriors. He was one of the police officers, and he's Flintstones. That guy's been in a few different movies. I just couldn't remember. He's just one of those guys. Just like you see him, and like that guy's gonna be in something, where he's like the bad guy or something like that.
Right.
I mean, I know he's not in the movie Maniac, but Maniac Cop, but he could have been the guy in Maniac Cop because he has that jawline.
Yeah, the one of the boss levels up there, the older middle-aged white guy, that's Richard Hurd, who would go on in a couple of years to be William Shatner's captain, and also Stacy Sheridan's captain from T.J. Hooker. Because as soon as I saw him, and I went, oh, that's T.J. Hooker's boss. I always forget what his name is too. So this is a guy that had been around and everything too. So there were a couple names in this movie that may have been recognized. Well, there's a guy, the one bad guy in there that kind of looks like a level B Tom Jones, which to me is Burt Convy, and this guy's like a level C, so he's one level below it, and he's the one in the really tight pants or whatever too. But let's just go straight through the film. Cheerleader, martial arts, 80s, high school. It's got all the ingredients that you would want for something silly and stupid, which we get. I actually think, though, while this movie's free on Tubi TV with ads, but also I believe you can find it playing on YouTube currently, at least here in the United States, depending on where you're at across the world. It's a film that wasn't really popular. It was just one of those ones that was there. Obviously, it had some legs on VHS. But the opening scene, you get this guy, and he's just whacked out of his mind, high as you know what.
Yeah.
And checks on her or whatever like that. And we get our first gratuitous shot of boobs with, some other couple watching the dude, and she's topless or whatever. Very 80s type bodies and outfits in here. And he wants to go find a tuna or something in the ocean because he's so damn high. And of course the girl had walked away. And it's her brother and he drowns. It's like, okay, well, there you go. It's kind of a disturbing way to start because it was not funny at all. There was no goofy lines or whatever.
No. It started off serious, didn't it?
Exactly. It was like, oh my God, this is going to be kind of dark.
Yep. Yeah. So, yeah, and I want to speak about the whole thing being in the '80s. This was like probably big before the whole plastic surgery rush.
Absolutely.
Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah. So you have all natural people in here. So you're not getting like you would be like a cheap National Lampoon's movie.
Yep.
This actually was really really nice to see that people actually looked normal. You weren't seeing the big busty physiques. If you did that, it was because the girl was naturally busty.
Yes.
Yeah. No one looks fake. And I'm not sure when it's supposed to take place. Is it supposed to I know it's on near docks. Was this California?
It's definitely California, and when in doubt, guess California. Unless it's John Hughes, then it's Chicago area. And actually, there's a fair amount of Florida films for the 80s, too, which we haven't touched on yet.
That's what I was wondering. I'm thinking
definitely California. And when they mention Pacific Coast and all that too. I'm guessing, Malibu, heading up toward
Yeah.
the Central Coast towards San Francisco area, just from
Mhm.
what they've mentioned. Now it's probably filmed right there in Los Angeles, but
Yeah.
yeah, you can just sort of tell. And I agree with you 100%. When a movie's like this and it's got natural people in there, even though they're actors and they try to get good-looking people, it feels real. And there's not necessarily a lot of close-ups or whatever. There's a lot of static shots, nothing like you'd see today with thousands of edits and ungodly, unbeautiful looking people that don't look real at all. They got some weird look to it. So it turns out the next scene, after we get the introduction and all that too, we're going, lovely but deadly is a bit of a double entendre, because the cheerleader's lovely but deadly, as we'll soon find out here in a moment, in another dark scene, which I loved. But it's also having to do with drugs, because there's so many different drugs out there. This is a movie that wasn't afraid of talking about what it's like at high school. You don't really get that today. It's more about boys' crews and girls' crews and all that kind of stuff. And, just it's something simple and basic, just dealing with drugs and the effects they have on you. Now, again, this movie doesn't take a particular stance one way or the other. It just depicts what happens with it. And it's the reason why this lady has revenge. So there's some cute ladies on the beach, but when they get to the next scene, you get the credits rolling, very cheap credits with a song that's playing, lovely but deadly, and it's like a high school prom. And I want to stop right here and mention this. I will say this: the absolute most positive thing that I would take out of this, if I had to pump it for 30 seconds in some sort of boardroom, is whoever did the theme song for this and did the singing, incredible amount of vibrato. It's actually a very good song. It has everything to do with the thing. It gets you drawn in. It's a female doing it, so it's kind of sexy. It's good, and it's just, I'm like going, wow, it's kind of a dark movie. You see this girl, and she's sitting there, and this one dude's like filming a couple of chicks dancing around or whatever. And of course, the girls even back then, of course, go crazy with any guy that wants to take pictures of them, because we know that's how ladies are, or at least used to, allegedly.
Yeah.
But she kind of asks for this guy, wants to score some drugs. She's very beautiful. She's in a nice dress. Well, they go back to the dude's like man cave where he's got TV going, and he's calling himself like Mr. Magic and all this stupid stud stuff. Oh, you're gonna see what Mr. Magic can do here. Oh yeah, I got everything. And she goes into full detective mode or whatever, and he puts the moves on her. She gets a little frisky, and then right when we're about ready for the big hunk of chunka or whatever like that, she kicks his ass and takes the jar of drugs that he has, because he talks about how he has parsley, and pot and other stuff in there. She shoves in his mouth and basically kills the dude. But we find out he made it to the hospital and hung himself in verbal dialogue a little bit later. I'm like, this is not funny to start off. 15 minutes.
I mean, you find out later that that someone else murdered him. He didn't hang himself because he was in jail.
Because there's multiple drug dealers for the different groups of clientele. As they said, junior highs for junior high. That was a funny line.
She's like pouring the stuff in it, and it looks like green herb, and she's pouring into his throat, and then she's rubbing his throat. She's like, I used to do this for my dog when he had to swallow his pills. I was like, this is dark, man. But I'm like, okay. So then it goes from there to she's the new kid in class and all, and the cops show up and it's like, and the cops wants to talk to her, and this guy he's supposed to like the student council. And he's telling the cops like, hey, lay off and all. She's like, she's new, she didn't know anything, She just, doesn't know any better. She doesn't know who's what. Yeah. And then the cop kind of like, okay, sure, I'll just lay it off. I was like, what? Like the cop would be like, sir, I'm talking to her. You're interfering in the investigation. Move. It's like,
well, we mentioned before, particularly on Tuesday nights with most of our action films, how cops have been presented as reliable people, maybe 50s, 60s, and then untrustworthy, but at least competent. And then you get to a point where you ignore them by the 70s, but by now, 70s and 80s, as the cops are buffoons, can't get anything done. And it just furthers this whole exploitation angle of her taking matters in her own hands, because it's a revenge film, and that's what we want. Cheerleader revenge in high school, but it starts off dark. She meets the new guy, and new guy comes over, and he's being the nice guy, beta male orbiter, you want to call it, because she's like, well, I'm kind of seeing someone who's actually lamer than this dude. Her boyfriend's this college wannabe music guy who sings really bad, crappy songs. And thankfully we don't see too much of him. But he goes over her house, and we find out in a scene that I thought was kind of cool. She's chopping wood, like, up in Idaho, my dad got injured when a log fell on him, and because they're loggers and they're down here in California. So it makes sense. It kind of ties into what's going on, and it sets things up. So not necessarily a lot of action, but we find out pretty quick what's going on, how their parents are going to get to home, and we're sitting here going, all right, we're going to get a bunch of cheerleader violence here any moment.
Oh, yeah. Especially when in that locker room scene you got coming on, you got later in the movie, it's because she's trying to track down this other guy, and I forgot what
football player dude
was there.
King shit, numero uno, the head cheese.
I can't remember what his name is.
It's some goofy weird ass name.
Yeah. But yeah, so yeah. Anyway, so yeah, Mantis Manigan. That's what it was. Rick Moser plays I don't sure what else he's done, but yeah, apparently the football quarterback, every girl wants, like, oh, he knows more. He can get here in touch with the guys who are in charge of everything, the drugs,
Yeah. Oh,
so,
yeah.
So she's like, okay, she's like, and so she's like, okay, I'm gonna go try to talk to somebody, that knows him. It was his ex-girlfriend, and then you get this other girl played by Gloria, we've also just recently saw her in another movie, bro.
Yeah.
Looker.
Oh. She had an actor profile in the early 80s, it seems like.
She was a restaurant girl. And she's jealous, and she's like, no, there's a line. You have to wait. It's not your turn. We're all trying to date this guy.
Oh, yeah, exactly. It's the pecking order of the ladies.
That leads to the locker room scene where they're all fighting in there.
Well, before we get to the locker room scene, let me catch up on one little scene that stuck out to me that I thought was very creepy. When we had met her boyfriend, he seems like a nice dude. He's got the old-fashioned Adidas logo shirt on, so the fashion stuff's pretty interesting in this movie. A lot of solid colors and non-primary stuff. Not necessarily pastels, but it's definitely very 80-ish. Her boyfriend's talking to this older white dude, and you're instantly going, okay, we know he's going to be a bad guy. We just don't know how yet. And of course, everything's going to be involved, which we'll see here shortly. But yeah, there's a scene where she's working in the library, and she's got a long skirt on, and she's standing on something, and this ginger weird dude comes up, asks her about a book, and he grabs her on her waist, and he starts rubbing her leg and humping the back of her leg or whatever, grinding on it. I'm like, weird stuff like that happens in schools, don't get me wrong, but this was just, it was inappropriate, and you kind of got to have that when you're having an exploitation film. You really got to get where you're crossing boundaries a little bit too, because you don't see this in a mainstream type film. Nothing really happens at this particular point, but that's just a reminder of all this stuff that's going on, because there's an even paler weirdo blonde dude that's talks to her boyfriend about stuff, and he's like, hey, I need to talk to you, bro. I need your answer. And the guy's like, the answer's no. So the blonde guy runs off to these two dudes that, as you say, leads into the locker room scene. And this is where it gets bizarre to me. And I'll just mention it briefly and let you take over here. But they're walking down the hall, the nice guy that she just met, and the two dudes obviously were trying to get the new guy to take some money so that he wouldn't say anything. It was hush money.
Yes, yeah.
So they're going to go beat his ass. And so they're walking down the hall, and the three dudes come up. You see boom mics everywhere in this movie too.
Yeah.
And these three dudes go, and no high school ever has this unless it's private and elitist or whatever. Fencing is something that I've spent a good deal of time in my life, coaching a lot of different sports. These guys come out in their foils and their masks only, and they corner them like in a shop classroom before she goes and starts kicking all their ass in a very 50% speed fight.
I know
it's really weird.
It was kind of funny though, but she's holding her own, she's doing stuff, while her boyfriend's just this guy
ass beat like a punk.
His stomach's getting punched in, and I'm thinking this guy has eternal bleeding now. And we see later when he's going on the stretcher, he's got blood coming out of his mouth. I'm like, he's dead. There's no way.
It's all wrapped up.
Because that was wasn't that your buddy Robert or something Heard?
Not yet. Not yet.
I thought those guys looked similar. One of the guys.
Not yet. No. Not yet.
But yeah, she's doing the flips on. She's on top of the desk, and then she's like kicking them before they can even use the fencing sword. Yeah, I mean, it's what you expect, from this movie. It's a low budget, and it's like, you got a cute little Puerto Rican chick up there doing Hollywood's version actually a low budget version of kung fu.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, in order to take out guys, she's got to have like, an equalizer. They want to make it somewhat believable. So
Which is not.
Well,
I mean, she doesn't move bad, or I'm not saying she's legit or any of that kind of stuff.
No,
We're not
she's
here
not.
to analyze her kung fu, but it's just weird that she's a cheerleader that she's in kung fu in high school.
She's not doing flips and stuff like that. Like you would see like in anything else where she just do unbelievable stuff. No, she's just mainly doing kicks, and yeah, pretty much that's about it. Where we find out that she learned that stuff from her friend Gloria. I'm not sure if they're on campus, if that's a course you can take in high school, is learning kung fu, or if that's just
absolutely not. Maybe in California, who knows?
Yeah,
any listeners
that's the one that I couldn't tell.
In California, they would know. No, it typically, to my knowledge, never was self-defense law. It's liability issues primarily,
but
because she's has a discussion with the head cheerleader / or I should say karate lady in there too before she gets into the dressing room.
So it must be one of the classes on there, courses you can take, at this school, this fancy school. Because she said you're in the faculty, you don't speak up any about it. She's like, well, I can't. It's like, so. And
we get some gratuitous booby shots in here too. Very natural.
Very natural and very, I'd say decent, but
very nice.
Apart from, but not too much where it distracts you from the movie.
Exactly. It's just put in there. Yeah. The head lady slut who wants to sleep with the quarterback, he recognizes her as a threat, comes in there, gets real menacing. She's wearing the gray members only jacket. Then you get one of these really horrible girl fights in the girl locker room with lots of, I'm going to hold you from behind. I'm going to break the hold. I'm going to do the first day of judo class, arm toss flip thingy and really bad camera work and all that. But they let it run for a minute or two. It's kind of cool.
I liked it because Gloria came in to break it up, and she's like, and like in the no, was it Gloria? Yeah, it was Gloria because I'm trying to remember who the other girl was, the one that broke it up, who's in there fighting with her.
Karate lady.
Yeah, maybe it was Linda Shane. I'm not sure. Anyway, there's too many blondes in this movie. So the one faculty member, that lady, the karate lady or kung fu lady, she breaks up the fight, and then the little girl, gives her kind of basically just gives her a lip, and she just basically just puts her in her place. She's like, you say the next one, because she basically kicked her cigarette out of her mouth. So the next one will be your teeth. But so they all do the same kick, so in the movie they all. Yeah, it's like nobody does like a jumping spinning kick. It's just like kick from behind, or kick the but it didn't really disturb me as much though because the rest of the movie was kind of because it was hokey. It would be like anything you'd watch like on like Incredible Hulk, I'd say, as far as storylines goes, because we got a guy here called Honest Charlie who runs a bunch of grocery store chains here. And he's all involved in this drug business too.
Well, yeah. The thing too is, and that's the problem with this movie is it has a lot of shifts in their tone. Like I don't know if there's delays in filming it, or if second units filmed it and thought it would be a certain way. But she meets the honky quarterback, and I will say this: the dude looks like a football player. I mean, the dude's big, and he's mildly attractive and handsome. And she goes to his house because she's investigating, trying to find this other drug guy. So. There's lots of really bad, horrible double entendre talk between her and any guy she comes across. So he walks her into his bedroom and all that. They make out for a minute. And it's a weird bit of dialogue, and I really, frankly, don't want to take the scene because he basically says, "Hey, I just screwed my main blonde, so you're gonna have to wait a little bit too, but I promise you it'll be worth it." She's like, "Okay," and it's like,
he's an idiot.
I remember being a teenager. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
5 minutes, boom, let's go. All right. After that, 15, or whatever. And I didn't really get it, but it's the hypersexualized teenager that the 80s started to not be afraid of showing on here. And we have to talk about this too. Besides hypersexualized adults that we're going to talk about here in a moment, the 80s hated the nerd, because there's this nerd guy in here that I wish she would have just kicked his skull in, because he's like everybody's butt sniffing friend and running around. Yeah, it's just it pisses me off. But yeah, she goes to this dude's house and they're having a costume party for no reason whatsoever. Then my boy TJ Hooker's boss, Dick Hurd, shows up, and he's got some stupid leather vest cowboy looking thing on. And remember, this is supposed to be like LA or Pacific Coast, so really northern LA. And they all make all these stupid comments, and it devolves over too long a period of time with the chicks and food and rolling around, but not before she finds a major drug stash and steals a few samples. This scene goes on way too long. We get chicks fighting in the food and they let it go. I don't know. What's your take on this?
Well, this guy you're talking about, the nerdy guy, Marvin Katzoff. He's known for Mr. Payback, an interactive movie from 1995, MathNet, 87, and Lovely But Deadly. So, I think the reason they kept him around, though, because, well, this guy, he was a nerd. So they figured nerd, and he's a dweeb. He's not going to say anything because he's smart, but he's not too smart, where he's going to try to blackmail anybody. And in a school like this where they run everything, he's gonna be their lackey.
But what's cool is that while this is pretty honest to the way you would say a high school scene is, the next 10, 15 minutes or so are pretty creepy in a way too, because after the party, the next day, a quarterback dude's got his Porsche. Of course, he has money, and with being involved in drugs, we're going to assume and all that. But he takes her to Richard Hurd's seaside crib. Looks like a place in Malibu, and of course he does what older guys do. He shows how rich I am, gives her the talk, and he puts the moves on her on the couch. She ball shots him, and he's laughing or whatever. It's like, okay, I get it. And then, of course, she beats him up a little bit.
But we did learn in the party scene, though, we had that. You're passing this up. I don't know why you're passing this up. They had a huge cat fight. No, it turned out to be a food fight. Where they're just dumping her and the other girl. Were basically, I think her name was Denise. I can't remember her name, but they were basically because they both want this guy, the football player, and they're all jealous. So they're dumping food, and poor Mel Novak is the actor. You should know him from Eye for an Eye. He played Tony Montoya.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, gotcha.
He's the guy. He's the rich guy that owns thing, and he's freaking out because he keeps destroying vases, knocking stuff over. He's like, "Oh, not the caviar."
He's your Jack Palance ripoff looking guy.
Yes. She did. So after that, the fight's broken up. Because the good old boy, the one she's going to go visit his house, Honest Charlie, he told the guy, he's like, "Hey, lay off, you stuffy, stiff neck. Let them fight. This is more fun than anything that's ever happened here before." Mm-hmm. So after the little fight thing's over and everything, you had the main girl. She went over to use the bathroom, and then she overhears him with Honest Charlie and the football player. They're talking about the drugs and shipping and all that stuff. And then when she speaks out the bathroom door, and this is really kind of weirded me out. Why is she using the bathroom door where the drugs are stored next to? And you're going to talk outside the door where she's in the bathroom. Did they not know that she walked in there? Like, does nobody keep an eye?
This movie's got some really bad cuts and stuff in there. Some of it really doesn't make sense. It's not a movie you actually have to think really hard about, but there are some obvious things like that you're like, what the hell's going on here? But then you goes, it's a cheerleader kung fu movie,
Yeah. So because at first the girl dumped the stuff on her leg. And this is where the fight happened. Yeah. The guy told her I was mad. The rich, told her like, go in there, clean up your stuff. Then she went to the bathroom. She heard on her. Then she sneaks the drugs, put them into her panties, and then they had the food fight. But it was kind of funny though. Like they're keeping the drugs looking like those treasure chests. You'd see at the bottom of your fish tank.
Yeah, the pirate booty one, the big one you have in your man cave. That's exactly where it's at.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
okay.
So yeah, it was kind of weird to see that in the movie. I was like, I'm like, the only time I see those kind of suitcases is like if you're like in a dark shadows or or like Treasure Island. But,
You know, the big thing is we're pretty much 2/3 more than that all the way through the movie, and at this point, to me, it feels like it's really slowing down because now I understand what this movie's going to do or try to do while I'm watching it, and really, this last big scene is her making her way to the warehouse where the drugs are coming in, and of course, her boyfriend, who runs the shipping company or that apparently was acting like he didn't know about it. It's all related, but really the drug dealers she was looking for were just the low-level boss guys. We talk about the boss food chain as a template in all our martial arts films, and this is a perfect example of it because she goes there, she beats up some goons, and she's being chased around like some warehouse pallets and stuff. This is where I said if the movie had probably twice as much action, even though the action's not great, maybe a little bit more gratuitous TNA, it definitely would have been a lot better film, because this ending's not bad. I don't hate it or anything like that. It is what it is. But I got to tell you, from the beginning of the film, I was kind of hooked by how they just went dark immediately. And I'm like, okay, this girl snuffed this guy out. I thought there'd be more gruesome stuff in here, but there's not.
I thought she was.
This movie kind of shifts around a little bit.
You get that sense, when she puts the guy in the hospital, there's going to be more. She's just going to go around each guy seduce them to kill them.
Yeah.
But you don't really get this. It turns into like like you said, it's I don't know
time filler. They're chasing her, on foot. They've got the guns though, and they're in their warehouse industrial area, and so it's like a minute of her literally just running with them behind and slipping and falling. Just the dipshitty stuff that you're like, boy, they're just trying to fill in time to end this damn movie. They make it 90 minutes long. Yeah,
and you got Gamora. Looks like the guy who played Mundo from Blazing Saddles. I don't be surprised if it's the same guy or not. But yeah, he's like, I want a girl. I want to make her. And she's like, because they're gonna kill her, put her into the box and send her to Thailand or whatever, or somewhere. And she's like, hold on. She's like, no, don't put me in there. Just kill me first. It's like, and he's like, whatever. And then she's like, well, I will let you press. And he's like, and she's like, and he's like, oh, so your guy is like, oh, she wants to get Richard Herd. I think was it Richard Herd or was it? It was Richard Herd. It was the other guy.
It was the other guy.
Yeah, I can't remember what his name is. Damn it. But Judd Omen, that's the guy's name. And basically, she went. They like, oh, she wants to get freaky for the last couple of her last Raw. And Gamora was like, because you know what? Hey, I haven't had a turn. I always want a girl. I never get to go and have a party and stuff. So yeah. So he's sitting there. She's sitting on a box of the grapefruit, and stuff. He eats a grapefruit in front of her and starts kind of like macking. Hey, how's it going? I'm Gamora, and I'm being like, and she's like, you want to bite? She saw that. She completely grossed out.
And she has absolutely zero issues using her sexuality to get revenge, and that's a part of the exploitation thing, whether she's doing it intentionally or not. That really gets amped up a lot in those types of films, deliberately, typically. And in this case here, they definitely don't do it. They have the big chase scene and they're fighting at the docks or whatever, and they go through this big fight. And of course, she's successful. There's some really bad kicks and flips off the pier into the water, but basically, she beats up Richard Herd at the end, and that's pretty much a day because she has her karate class, which is of course all women, show up to help her save the day too. So she's got like a tracksuit special going on. All the girls show up, and it is what it is.
That reminded me of another movie. Wasn't that The Protector? With same kind of thing where they use equipment to take out the bad guy. Construction equipment with Jackie Chan. Was it that movie?
It was in a lot of 80s movies.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to say, hey, this is 1981. They're doing it on the dock. So yeah, it's overall, I think for my final impressions, it is what it is. It's on Tubi TV. I think you told me that, and it's free. Yeah. So you can find it there. You can find it on YouTube. It's very tame for an exploitation film.
Yeah. I want to point out her mother though. Well, a lot of people won't know this, but her Marie Windsor was her mother, who's been an actress since the 40s. She's famous for The Killing, which is 1956, and then Mars Invaded, Swamp Women, Catwoman on the Moon. So like here, this lady's been in like a lot of movies. She died. I think she's dead. Yeah, she died in 2000, age 80. Been around since like the 1990s. 1919. But yeah, this woman had been in everything. She went to Salem's Lot, Freaky Friday, Manhunter.
Yep.
Both movies. The pilot.
Manhunter, the original.
Yeah.
Hannibal film made for
Barnaby
TV.
Jones. Gunsmoke. I'm looking, and she was in a Batman TV series. She played Nellie Majors.
Well, just to kind of
yeah.
follow up with what you're saying, that's definitely one thing you see in the 70s and 80s when we talk about how people who were in old Hollywood making their transition over into television, especially in the twilight of their careers, especially women, you definitely would see a bit more of this. You definitely saw it on actor or actress of the week type shows like Fantasy Island, Love Boat, and such here too. So again, this is 80-81 when this is filmed and when it came out. Lovely but Deadly. It's a very weak exploitation film. It's not hardcore representative of, like, say, the Chicks in Prison type of stuff or the more gratuitous things, or like Blackula or other great films like from the 70s that really take this to their own extreme level too. So it was an interesting movie to kind of see because it was available. It's like, oh yeah, this is one that you don't find talked about a lot, but the premise sounds a bit more interesting than what the movie turns out to be. Cheerleaders is her kung fu and her group of girls in high school to be drug guys. It's simple. It's effective. It's not a great film. It's pretty poorly produced. It feels like an 80s film.
It's funny. They actually got the guy, Rick Moser. Actually, he's a football player. He played for the Dolphins back in 1980 and also on the Buccaneers in 82. He was on the Chiefs and the Steelers, at least the Steelers twice. So they actually he's a linebacker, a running back.
He certainly looks like it.
To
your point, you mentioned early on that the people look normal and human in here, and I think this movie did a good job of capturing what it would be like to be in the high school level trying to do something on your own. So it's successful that way. The theme song is actually good. It's great for what it is. And you hear her singing something else a little bit later on. The fighting, don't bother, but at least it's not, I will say this, at least the fighting's not heavily edited and overproduced like you would see on most action films today, currently. So
basically, here's your tags, man. Drug smuggling, cheerleader, bikini, sexploitation, kung fu.
Yeah, go check it out. Lovely but Deadly, 1981. RDV, I'd like to thank you for showing up tonight too. We'll be back Tuesday night live with our next extreme film, as it were. We just did Body Double, a erotic thriller from the early mid 80s. Brian De Palma just coming off of Scarface. That's getting a little popular. Check that one out. If you haven't seen the film, it's awesome, especially if you like Hitchcock and thrillers and voyeurism and sexuality. That's done the way it should be done. We're going to be dropping the next Twin Peaks season 2, episode 19, I believe. Professor Pixel and I just did. And do you guys got anything dropping here soon? We just dropped the most latest Kung Fu.
I'm just waiting for him to get time when we're going to do the last episode of Kung Fu.
Gotcha. The CW show season finale. There you go. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening, Jim. Have a good evening. Check it out. Let us know what you think. This is Rob for RDV and everybody involved here at the Extreme Movie Show. Good night. And as always, stay extreme, stay lovely, but make sure to stay deadly.